She said this is the worst meeting you could. I put my face with the name. I don't know. Yeah. Hey, how are you? It's pretty good.
Oh, Dave. Ernesto. It's great to meet you. How you doing? Yeah, sorry. I know my team got it. Yeah, we're going to come over and check everything out. It's all good. No worries. How's everything going on? Good. Glad to hear it. You know what? I saw you guys had an event this past month. Oh, we had it scheduled and we really. Oh, okay. I hope I still have a chance to go there. I'll be over not at the actual location. So is it yeah, April. Yeah. Okay. So I think we really
It's wonderful to meet you in person.
Oh, yeah. And I was able to still transfer books with it. We had earlier way. I think it's good. Oh, that was great.
We're very excited.
Very much other stuff going on. Do you live in No, I live in CalSavers. I was born and raised.
You might want to.
No, yeah, so Paul's excited over mine. Right now we're doing a lot of work.
But I want to right now when everyone.
Okay.
And it's taking us a long time.
Quite all right. I don't think anyone's listened to me so well ever. Well behaved. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kelly Batson. Welcome to the United Way of the Bay Area's conference room with a large column in the middle. I like to name it so that everyone knows that yes, it's a little annoying, but we all have to deal with it. We are recording this presentation, so just so you know, you'll be recorded. The camera is on the panel though, so we're the lucky ones up here. But thank you all for coming. Thank you to the Asset Funders Network. We're really excited to be talking about CalSavers today. A couple housekeeping items, and then we'll do a quick show of hands to see who's in the room. But we have the single restrooms right here outside the door to the left. But then if you sneak past that hallway, past a little kitchen, there's some additional restrooms. So if you go to use the restroom and someone's in the single ones, there's some down the hall there. Yeah, and so I think that's all the housekeeping things. Yeah, so Mona's reminding me that we have cards on the table for the Opportunity Summit coming up, Rise Together's Opportunity Summit. It's on May 10th. It's going to be really exciting. You should come. You should buy a table and have 8 of your colleagues come. It's going to be a great day full of lots of really compelling topics and speakers. I believe Lenny Mendonça, I can't remember his role now with the state, some fancy title with Governor Newsom's administration is one of the keynotes, and so that's really exciting. But I think we're going to get started. I will pass this on to Padmini. I practiced this, didn't I, Padmini? Padmini Parthasarathi is going to be our moderator for the panel this morning, or I guess it's the afternoon. And she is a senior program officer at Walter and Elise Haas Fund. And she has a mic down there, so I'm going to let her take it from there.
Thanks, Kelly. So as Kelly said, I'm Padmini Parthasarathi. I'm the Senior Program Officer for Economic Security at the Walter and Elise Haas Fund. I'm also on the Bay Area Steering Committee for the Asset Funders Network. And I also want to thank our co-sponsors today, Northern California Grantmakers and United Way of the Bay Area, where we are today. And thank you for hosting us here. So I want to introduce our panel. I'm going to do a brief introduction because you have their bios if you want to learn more about them, and then we will get into our program. So Going down the line here, we have Natalie Sandoval, who's the Financial Stability Director with United Way United Ways of California. And then next we have Mark Herbert, who's the California Director for Small Business Majority. And then last but not least, you just heard from Kelly Watson, who's the Senior VP for Community Impact at United Way of the Bay Area. So the format we're going to use today is we're going to start off with a presentation by Nayeli to give you all an overview of what is the CalSavers program, how does it work, all the basics so that we're all on the same page. And I know some of you may know this already, but I think it'll be new for a lot of you in the room, so that we all know the basic facts. And then we will go into a panel discussion so that you can hear more about what each of the organizations represented on the panel are doing related to the CalSavers program. And I'll also share a little bit about why, as a funder, we're investing in the implementation of CalSavers. And then we'll have time for Q&A. So I will pass it off to Natalie. And there's
you all hear me okay? Great. Thanks, Padmini, for the introduction, to Mona for setting up all of this. Again, like Padmini mentioned, I'll be giving, just like a 10-minute overview of what CalSavers is and how it can help address poverty and also do, some wealth building approaches as well. And so I'll be going over, start off with, CalSavers is really an exciting opportunity to help workers prepare for the future. And it's also an opportunity to help us rethink what retirement looks like in California. And I'll be going over why that's important. So to start off with, I'll be going over, what is the issue that CalSavers is trying to address? What is CalSavers as a program? What has been the outreach and engagement strategy throughout the state? What we're working on, as well as what are some funding opportunities as well. And we'll be getting into that a little bit more in depth when we talk about, when we have the panel as well. So this is the status quo currently, and unfortunately we have, a pretty diverse state, but we have about 7.5 million Californians who lack a workplace retirement program. And about half of those workers who are on track to retire with incomes that are about 200% below the federal poverty level. And a lot of these workers or employers who might be eligible for CalSavers, about 2/3 are small business owners. So, getting a lot to the work that Small Business Majority is doing, working with folks on the ground. So this really calls, for a solution like CalSavers into engaging, to addressing this issue. I think it's also important to know that about half of those who would be eligible for don't currently have a retirement program are women, and also about half of them are people of color as well. So CalSavers can really help millions of California be on track to retire into a more financially secure future as well. So a bit of an overview of what CalSavers is. These are the nuts and bolts. It's a program that's obviously, high level, meant to address the issue of providing a retirement program for employees and for employers as well. So how it works, it's completely voluntary for employees. So it's, employees are automatically enrolled, and they can choose to stay enrolled or not. It's portable, which means that the program follows the employee, doesn't follow the employer. And self-employed individuals are welcome as well. And this is completely sustainable by the fees from getting people to sign on into CalSavers. It's also professionally managed by a census. California is actually the third state to take on a program of this magnitude, behind Oregon and Illinois as well. And it also it's managed by a board of directors as well from the state. So a little bit more of the basics. It's a Roth IRA. It's has a traditional IRA with an elective option. It also has a default contribution rate of about 5%, with the 1% automatic escalation up to 8% that can be set and adjusted as well. And there's different investment options as well. The default is to have at least $1,000 into money market, and then the subsequent contributions are on a target date fund. And like I said, the employee fees decline as the savings grow, and it's easy to use. So for the employer, this actually has many benefits. We know that some employers are not able to provide or don't have an option, they're small, to provide a retirement program. So for employers, this is a no or low cost administrative costs, no fiduciary liability because it's sustained by, like I said, the money that is being deducted from the employee's payroll. And it also has minimal complexity administratively. Again, like small business, majority will tell you they've done focus groups on this. These are like 3 things that are important to employers as well. And it can also be a tool to boost the morale of employees as well, and contribute to greater employee retention, and being able to provide an option for employees to save for retirement. And it's also an affordable and convenient tool, again, for small businesses as well. So this is what a snapshot, this is pretty dense, but snapshot of what eligibility looks like for counties with populations over 500,000. So this is data from the EDD, the Employment Department, State Employment Department. You'll see Northern California, Santa Clara, Alameda, San Francisco, and Contra Costa, rank within the top counties where people might be eligible for the program. And in the columns, you'll see what that looks like within the different employee firm sizes as well. So currently, employees also experience some barriers to accessing retirement programs at their work. So for example, many employers are not able to provide this on their own for employees, so they lack access. There's sometimes a minimum opening deposit or financial costs associated with this. And there's also, quite frankly, sometimes a lack of financial education or hesitation to engage in retirement program, especially from younger or underserved communities as well. And in particularly with younger populations, retirement feels really far away. And compared to some immediate needs that people might have. So for example, paying down debt or, college students loans or saving, for a house and stuff like that. And then you'll see from the age profile here that about 2/3 of those who are potentially eligible for CalSavers are under age 44, and at least 1/3, are under 30. So really provides an opportunity to target this population as well. And in terms of what an employee profile looks like, average income, a lot of these folks who are eligible for, would be eligible for retirement are from low wage, jobs. So the average income is about $35,146. And retail, hospitality, manufacturing, and healthcare and social services, including nonprofits, are within the top 4 industries where employees would be eligible. And just to highlight this, the savings potential and the way that CalSavers is set up, it's set up through a payroll deduction, savings option, automatic opt-in, and optional opt-out. And we know that what this means is that people are 15 times more likely to be on a path to retirement security, and 20 times more likely to save when they're automatically enrolled. So this is kind of like the set it and forget it. When they're automatically enrolled, they are more likely to continue saving. So it kind of puts that on an automatic path as well. But I think it also provides an opportunity to educate folks about what is this thing that your employer is opting you in as well. And as far as the impact of CalSavers, this is what it means really for low-wage worker. For a worker, so say for example, who's making about minimum wage level, whose total contributions, from working from age 25 up to retirement age are about 119,000. Because this retirement is a savings option, that interest earned is about almost double that. So their total account value is going to end up being about 349,000. So this is taking the scenario of an employee who starts saving right when they start working up until retirement age. The impact that this can have on different low-wage workers who don't have retirement options. And in terms of the implementation timeline, CalSavers is already fully baked, up and going. There's a pilot that's already running that started in November. About 30 employers have signed up to the pilot. And the program also, registration officially begins July 1st. So right now, CalSavers State Treasurer's Office is working with those pilot employers to try to have some learning lessons and work with them, what they call the white glove treatment, work with them really closely to try to get their feedback, and try to get things up and ready, make appropriate changes by July 1st. So in terms of, there's 3 waves of registration. So the first wave within by June 30, 2020 is for employers with 100 or more employees. The second wave is by 2021 with employers between 50 and 99 employees. And then the last one is employers with 5 or more employees need to register by June 30th, 2022. Something else to highlight is that individuals who are self-employed are also able to sign up for the program, but they need to, their employers is not mandated for that. So they need to ask for their employer to facilitate that for them as well. And CalSavers is really powered by partners, key stakeholders that are here and are also not here. From a United Way's perspective, I'll get into this into more detail. We're working as a backbone organization, working with our local United Ways to help set up regional work groups, working with stakeholders both on the employer side and the employee side, So this is a snapshot of just some of the, key partners from this work. And this is the role of regional work groups. We work to identify and recruit CalSavers champions, serve as CalSavers spokes people, and also identify pilot employers and funders as well, and work closely with a lot of partners, like including small business majority as well. So some opportunities for that, and again, I think we'll get into that a little bit more on the panel. But I think it's just important to highlight that, really building capacity. California has a unique model where they're using trusted messengers to try to get the word out about CalSavers. Really, what this means is we need to expand the coverage of these partners who are working on the ground, and then support the engagement too of different key organizations into the regional work groups to try to identify what is the messaging that resonates not only for different populations groups, but also geographically. And in terms of outreach, really support media efforts as well with, underserved communities. So, for example, Telemundo, Univision, and different ethnic media relations as well to try to get ahead of the curve and identify, how people can connect with that. So, I'll leave this, up there. Take questions later.
So I think we can, sorry,
It's 8 minutes every night.
So I think if we can take a couple of questions, if you have something like really that's around clarifying something Natalie said, like around the basics of the program, but she'll also be going into more detail about the outreach strategy and all that. But I mostly want to make sure that everyone understands like the mechanics of the program.
So I have a question. Let's say there's an employee working for a company or working for a small business, and they don't have contributions to a retirement account, and they would like to enroll into CalSavers. Would their employer have to be a CalSavers employer in order for that employee to get those benefits, or can the employee enroll independently from their employer? Does that make sense?
I think so. So you're asking, it's an employer, and I'm gonna rely, but it's an employer facilitated.
Oh, I see.
So it's on the employer for businesses that have 5 or more employees.
Okay.
It's a great question. So how it works is if an employer already offers a retirement product, then they're not required to enroll in CalSavers. But an employer has to do something, either offer a retirement product or allow their folks to go into CalSavers. If they are in some other retirement product, any employee can still go directly to CalSavers and create an account. And we're really excited about this, as Natalie mentioned, because this directly will enable gig workers and folks in independent contractors to create retirement savings vehicles in order to have some level of enrollment of savings. What's also really exciting that Natalie mentioned is the $1,000 sort of limit. So there have been a lot of studies showing that for folks in these income ranges, challenges around emergencies, financial emergencies is a serious issue. And so you don't want money tied up in some sort of product that will require some penalties if they try to withdraw early. And that's why there's an intentional $1,000 money market account. So it's sort of like a savings account. And then everything above the $1,000 goes into the investment vehicle. So that $1,000 folks can still access if they have emergencies. Then as they continue to put money into the program, that $1,000 will top off, and then the additional money will go into a retirement product. So individuals can do it, but it wouldn't be through like a payroll contribution, right? They'd have to actually go to the program, set up an account, link it to their bank account, and start making contributions.
Thank you for that.
I think another good thing to point out there is, obviously, we care about people being banked, but this is facilitated by a payroll deduction, so people don't actually need to have a bank account. But for employees who are asking their, who are self-employed, they do need to have a bank account when they sign up for the program.
So, you know what, I'm gonna bring you then.
So given the type of industries that you're mentioning, there's quite a high mobility of employees, right? So let's say that the employees with one employer that actually can offer this program, but after 6 months, they're moving to another employer and they don't offer anything. Can they take this account with them and contribute like individually, even if the new employer does not have the program?
Yeah, absolutely. It's completely portable, so the account follows the employee and not the employer. So if employee moves from one employer to another one, they can keep making contributions as well. And I also wanted to mention, that the one requirement for obviously we know, there's a high sensitivity of people who might be using ITINs as well. So the requirement is either to have a social security number or an ITIN as well. If for some reason there's a mismatch between, the information that the employer is providing and, the ITIN, that will not be shared with, that information will not be shared with the employer. They will just know that, their employee that didn't opt in, which is not disclosing the information for that. Yeah.
Does the employee have to be at the employed for a certain amount of time in order to be able to access that particular employer's CalSaver account?
No.
So they can register from the first time when they start working. Like,
Correct.
I get a job at Target tomorrow, I can start putting money into my.
Correct.
Is the list of pilot employers that are participating in this being made available? Are they published anywhere, like who those folks are?
Currently, no. Part of that's privacy issues, right? Some employers may not necessarily want everyone to know their business. That being said, we encourage a lot of our folks to be in the pilot, and actually one of the champions of this program is here in San Francisco. Her name's Kristen Evans. She owns the Booksmith in the Haight, and she is in the pilot program. And so she's providing invaluable feedback on how the program's working. She has a lot of millennial employees, and so this is a brilliant opportunity for her to be able to offer something or be able to facilitate those contributions. And what's really exciting also, she actually helped get the legislation passed. She came to Sacramento with us. She lobbied for the bill. She did press conferences with the legislators who are driving this piece of legislation. So sort of came full circle for her, and she's a local champion. She's been in the Chronicle and a great spokesperson for the program. So there are some out there, and we'll make sure to share those as they want to reveal themselves.
She's profiled in those like newspaper things on your tables.
Thank you, Natalie. So as you can see, this is a really innovative, exciting program, and thank you for all those questions, because there are a lot of, we didn't want to go like too into the weeds in the presentation, but there are a lot of these details about how the program works. So we're going to move into our panel. What I'm going to do first, though, is just tell you a little bit about, from a funder perspective, how I've been engaged with this work and what I've been funding, and then I'm going to pose a series of questions for panelists so that you can mostly hear from them. So as I shared, I'm at the Walter and Elise House Fund. And I've only been there about a couple months. Prior to that, I was at the California Wellness Foundation, and so my engagement with CalSavers actually started when I was there. So I'll share with you kind of from both perspectives how and why I've been engaged. I think common to both foundations that I've been in, one of the major reasons why we think that CalSavers is so crucial and such an important effort to be investing in is that, one, that retirement savings is a vital financial asset for a lot of the reasons that you heard Natalie describe, but also it is this key way to address economic equity and because of the populations that are most represented in those who do not have retirement plans, this is also, I see it as a key strategy around racial equity and gender equity and equity around, immigration status. I think it's really exciting that ITIN holders can participate in the program. It's one of the only public programs where that is the case. And why I think it's so key for funders to be engaged in this, and why I was so glad that Northern California Grantmakers partnered with us is, and I don't think Natalie actually said this explicitly, there are zero public dollars for outreach and education. So all of that work that Natalie described, all of that amazing, like that whole outreach structure, which is really impressive, is not funded by the state at all. So when you look at the scale and scope of the program, when you talk about reaching 7.5 million people, I at least feel that, private philanthropy, corporate philanthropy, we have a really major role in helping ensure the success of the program, because if people don't know about it or don't know how to access it, then we just have a program that no one is using. And probably the only other, public program or kind of safety net type program that even compares is, is the Affordable Care Act and covered California, in California's case, and Medi-Cal, and they had millions and millions of dollars. And despite that, private philanthropy had to put in millions more on top of that for outreach and education. And so if I, having done a lot of that work, if I compare the two, it's kind of incredible that there's no public funding. These are some of this is my personal opinions, I should say. And you can tell I feel very strongly about the importance of the program and in investing in it, just because this is such a great opportunity, and it would just be a shame, frankly, if we, miss opportunity to have the program be implemented successfully. And specifically, I'll say, at California Wellness Foundation, the other reason that we were committed to supporting CalSavers is, as a health funder, we were very much engaged in grant making around economic security, because we were basing our work on the research that increased wealth and financial stability improves health. So that really undergirded our work there. At California Wellness Foundation, I was support, just so you know, like who and what we were supporting. We were providing support to small business majority for the work that you'll hear about in a minute, as well as Young Invincibles, who's not here today, but you saw on one of the slides. They are helping lead a lot of the outreach work around millennials and young adults for a lot of the reasons that you heard around really changing the culture around young people saving for retirement. And they've learned a lot about that from their work on health coverage, actually, and convincing young adults that you should be covered. And that's where their name comes from. That's like, you're not invincible, and you need health care. We also partnered with United Ways of California to identify some of the regional work groups that needed investment. And so made grants to United Ways in the California Capital Region, which is the Sacramento region, Fresno, Madera counties, and Inland Valleys. And I know those are all non-Bay Area, but just to give you a sense of the spread. And then at the Walter and Elise Haas Fund, we're in now, we're supporting small business majority for their work. And as I get settled in my new job, I'm hoping to continue looking at, ways to invest here and in the Bay Area and California. So that is what I wanted to share. And we will move on to our panelists. And I guess we'll just pass this down. So the first thing I wanted to ask, to ask you to share is to share with the group a little bit about, what's your organization? What do you do? And why are you partnering with CalSavers? And what is your general overall approach to the work?
Sure. I'll go first.
Holding the mic.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Thank you. Yeah, so at United Way Bay Area, I've actually been there since, well, here, I guess we are here, literally. I've been here since 2006, and I primarily worked on our free tax preparation program for probably at least the first half of those 12 years now. And United Way is committed to getting people out of poverty. We have a couple programs that are focused on that. We do several things, but we have our 211 program, we have our youth workforce work, but we have our Spark Point centers, Spark Point partners that we work with, as well as our Earn It Keep It Save It free tax preparation, along with a few other things that we do. And so for us, it's really about, financial stability and offering, and see, I feel like, so there's, just so you know, the CalSavers team has given us a list of words we are not allowed to use when we talk about CalSavers, and offer is one of them. So if I talk about that, I'll try to catch myself. But so in our work, around financial stability, particularly around Spark Point and Earn It Keep It Save It, this makes perfect sense for us to be promoting something that's, increasing the financial stability of the people here in the Bay Area. And I agree with Padmini, it's also an equity issue, right? And some of the data that we recently looked at, and Nayeli shared some of it, more than half without retirement plans or program or access to a retirement plan for people of color, more than half are women. Also, in doing some additional research, even there are less people of color with an account, but then even with those with an account, they're not saving like other people, like white people, right? So it's just it's the truth, and we have a lot of work to do to reach the right groups. And also people with high incomes, 9 out of 10 people with high incomes have an account. 1 out of 10 people with low incomes have an account. So there's just a lot of work to be done, and I think this is right where United Way wants to be spending time. We are part of why are we doing this? Partly, we have the benefit of working with the United Ways of California, and they did receive, Padmini mentioned the United Ways that they're working with, or they were working with Cal Wellness, and we actually have some additional funding from another funder with United Ways of California, the Arnold Family Foundation. So we've received a grant to do some of that, but also, we know it's important, so that's why we're here. And something that just occurred to me more recently, although we've been working on this for a few months now, is I think for me, it's important that United Way shows up in this, not just a person who does outreach presentations and talks about the mechanics and the mandates and here's the rules and here's the, it's low cost, and, all those things are very important in the message, but also the data shows us that even people aren't saving enough, even the people who have an account, a plan, right, through their employer. So for me, as United Way and as an organization dedicated to getting people out of poverty, I think our message is not just here's a solution to offer or to facilitating a retirement plan or program. Here's why it's important that you start talking with your employees about savings, right? And making sure that the message about the importance of savings and the life-changing impact it can have is happening.
Great, thank you. So again, I'm Mark. I'm a California director for Small Business Majority. So we are a national small business education and advocacy organization. I manage our California operations. It's myself. There's a Northern California outreach manager, deputy directors in Southern California, along with another Southern California outreach manager. But we are small but mighty. And really, all of our work is organized around 2 core driving beliefs. So one is we believe that entrepreneurs and small employers are essential building blocks to healthy, sustainable, thriving local communities and economies, and therefore they deserve all the tools that they need to be successful. So we do a lot of programming and educational workshops, and we partner with chambers and business groups and associations to ensure that those folks in hard-to-reach communities have the tools that they need and are empowered to grow their business. And then the other core driving belief is we believe that there is an authentic voice of small business that exists in public policy, but is just vastly underrepresented. And we seek to bring that voice to stakeholders and policymakers in Sacramento and in DC and other state capitals in the country. And really, we see that many small business owners perceive policies very differently than much larger businesses. Yet larger businesses often have much louder voices when it comes to policy debates. And oftentimes very large business voices try to co-opt the voice of small business when it comes to policy enactment and policy and legislation. So we seek to make sure that that voice of small business is part of that conversation. And what I love about CalSavers, and the reason that we feel very passionately about this, is for both those reasons. In terms of the tools and resources that small businesses need to be successful, and also ensuring that they're actually heard when it comes to talking about policies that can actually make a difference for them, their business, and their employees. So we did a poll with AARP many years ago, before this bill was enacted, that showed 2/3 of small business owners wanted this. They see this as an amazing opportunity to attract talent, retain workers, and take care of their employees. And we know that the relationships between small employers and large employers often is very different when they're relating to their employees. And so we worked with a whole coalition of folks to try to advance this bill. I mentioned Kristen Evans. She came to Sacramento. She lobbied legislators in Sacramento, and we really wanted to make sure that that small business voice is part of that conversation. And we were fortunate to have the bill pass. And then as it was being implemented, we worked very closely with the CalSavers team to ensure that the voice that small business owners are represented in this conversation. And the reason small business owners care so much about this is that those stats that Nayeli talked about in terms of who has retirement product at work. So many small business owners don't have retirement products at work, not because they don't want to offer them. It's because they are not actually the target market for people selling retirement products. Because if I'm a retirement product broker, I am going to spend my time trying to get businesses that have 50, 100, 150 employees. Because I'm going to make way more money going after those businesses than I am going after the businesses that have 20, 10, or 5 employees. So there's this massive gap in the market when it comes to small businesses finding and accessing retirement products. And so the 3 main barriers that Nalia mentioned are cost, because it can be really expensive for a small business owner to set something up. Administrative complexity. These folks that we work with are not financial experts, and they usually are an HR team of one. And fiduciary liability. If you choose the wrong product, you can actually get sued by your employees because that product didn't perform. Those are the 3 biggest barriers, and CalSavers solves for all 3. So we're really excited to work throughout the state and with our partners to ensure that small businesses can take advantage of this opportunity.
Hi again. So Nayeli again with United Ways of California. We are a membership organization of about 30 local United Ways throughout the state. And what I really want to highlight in terms of our work with CalSavers and with different partners, and to touch upon, what a little bit of what both Kelly and Mark have been saying is, this really started as a legislative effort, and a lot of the stakeholders who have been involved and really committed to this were also, champion advocates behind getting this program passed. But I think, as I've said in the past, we have to win the implementation too. We have to make sure to resonate, some of the points that Panmini was saying, that there's a program that people are using, that it's a program that's sustainable, and that it's a program that's going towards helping workers. And, to United Way's mission, we fight for the education, health, and financial stability of every person in every community, including the 7.5 million workers who are not currently don't have an access to, be financially secure, in the future. We've done a lot of work to do, to do outreach around the earned income tax credit, the new state, not so new, fairly new, EITC. And so we say that, we're helping Californians become more financially secure now and into the future too, now with CalSavers. So hitting on, all the spectrum of that financial stability work. And, we at the statewide level, work really closely with the great work that our local United Ways are doing, support them as a backbone organization in helping them get set up with the regional work groups. Like I mentioned, the role of these work groups is really to take a look at what's happening locally and try to identify who are, the different organizations that we should be talking to. How can we really ramp up the outreach efforts, and what does that look like locally too? Because we know, for example, that what's happening geographically, the message that people need to hear in the Central Valley is not the same as what people need to hear in the Bay Area. It's not the same as what people need to hear in LA and in the Inland Empire. So we've set up, helped set up, obviously in partnership with our local United Ways, that infrastructure of, the 5 regional work groups, Sacramento, Fresno, Inland Empire, Bay Area, and Los Angeles as well. And we're going to need all hands on deck too, to help get the word out. And this is, why we're invested in this work too, to help those 7.5 million workers try to retire more securely into the future. And another thing to note is, United Way has, strong partnerships both on the employer side as well as the employee side. So really try to leverage that relationship with working through our workplace campaigns and also the different community organizations and financial stability programs that are already in place for that as well.
Great, thank you all. I wanted to add one thing that I think hasn't come up and that may be obvious, but part of the reason that as a funder, I think it's important, and that's another piece of the employer puzzle, is nonprofits as employers. I feel like we never talk about nonprofit. We talk a lot about, they are small businesses, right, but not the traditional small business. And so I know some of you that are here that you may be thinking about the people you serve at your nonprofit, but even as an employer, you may not, or a staff of nonprofits, you may not have access to retirement plans. So I just wanted to, mention that that's another reason why I think as a funder who cares about the nonprofit sector and the sustainability of the sector and retaining and recruiting talent, I think that's an important piece. And Cal Nonprofits has actually been a partner with CalSavers, throughout the process as well. So I didn't want to forget that because of who we are in the room. So next, you got the kind of overview and a lot of the statewide perspective from our panelists, and wanted to go to hearing from each of you about how you are addressing CalSavers specifically here in the Bay Area. And we'll start with Kelly. And move that down. Oh, I have this mic here.
Yeah, so I will say that we are in a good deal of the planning stage for this, only because just have a lot going on, like all of you do too. But we're looking to hire a position to coordinate the efforts here, so that is on its way. But it's already been mentioned a couple times, we certainly recognize the power of working in coalition. That's how United Way pretty much does thing here in the Bay Area. So we plan to convene CBOs, nonprofits, service providers on a regular basis, like Mayeli also mentioned, to become local champions of the work, but also sort of, be a distribution point and getting the information out, answering questions, and being thought partners with us as we try to get the message out. So that's in the works right now, as well as the employer business association chamber sort of convening as well. So we plan to have a work group of those folks to come together to talk about how do we take this message to the street and to the folks, to all the employers that that this could possibly resonate with. So that's on our list. And then just a general outreach campaign. How do we get out in the world? How do we start having conversations? How do we do presentations? Who do we need to talk to, right? Go to everyone we know and say, who do you think we should be talking to? And then we've developed a marketing and media plan. So what does it look like for us to do some social media work, some local, traditional media, as well as some non-traditional media, so that's all in the works, and unfortunately, I don't have all of the very specifics of that plan to share with you today. But I am hoping that if you're in the room and interested in being plugged into this, and I know we talked about this in planning this day for you all, that we want a way for you all to be engaged in, and if any of those work groups sound good to you, we want to make sure we capture that and take you with us. And then internally, and this has also been mentioned a little bit, we're working on how does this look as it gets integrated into our own programs, right? When SparkPoint centers and their financial coaches are working with their clients, how are they talking? Of course, the savings is one of the 4 goals that SparkPoints, have with their clients. But how do they start talking about retirement savings specifically and this product specifically? So there's that. Obviously, we all know the great opportunity that tax time presents in saving. So we're hoping that this would also be a part of that conversation. And then we're, of course, looking for, Natalie mentioned that United Ways tend to have a lot of employer relationships. A ton of them are not small business, right? But this opens up a conversation for us to have the conversation about who United Way is, and here's a thing that you should be doing for your employers in terms of retirement savings. But we have all kinds of ways we work with employers already, and we're going to add this to that continuum into that strategy to say, here's the things that your employees can take advantage of, and here's all the things that you can do in the community with us by your side. So that's really how we're looking at it here locally. And I look forward to working with all the different, some of you I've seen at many CalSavers things already, and I know you're interested and you want to be a part of this, and so I'm looking forward to engaging you and working with you on that.
Thank you. Yeah, so our model is really based around, as a small business support organization and supporting entrepreneurs, is making sure that those entrepreneurs are getting connected in to the local resources as they exist. So we work with a lot of business groups and associations around the state and here in the Bay to deliver quality content for free, so that those business groups can have a value add to their members. So we're not a membership-driven organization. We have a network of small business owners, but you don't have to pay to be a member of Small Business Majority, because we want all the tools that we offer, we want folks to be able to access those. So that allows us to partner with membership organizations who do charge businesses fees. And we'll come to them and say, we want to make sure that your members have access to this information. We want to make sure that your folks have the tools that they need. So we've already done dozens of workshops just on CalSavers to small business owners, saying, this is what it is, this is what's happening, here's the opportunity. We're inviting folks to get involved in the pilot program because it's a really great opportunity. I was doing a presentation, and I think it was like on slide 3. And someone already jumped up and said, how do I sign up for the pilot? I'm like, well, my pitch is at the end, but you're welcome to sign up now. Because they see this as a real opportunity, right? This is a real opportunity to access something that otherwise is going to be too expensive because of cost, too complex because of complexity, or, I'm not quite sure I'm going to be liable. So we work directly with local business groups and associations to be that additional support. Here in the Bay, we've done that with a number of groups already. We really excited working closely with United Way Bay Area to support them in however we can. I know we work together closely on a storyboard that just happened, and sort of ensuring that any businesses in our network that are interested in engaging and telling their story are part of that conversation. And partnering with groups. And we partnered with Cameo. They do a bunch of, they work with a bunch of business serving organizations, so small business development centers that train small businesses. So we did like a train the trainer with them. So we're about leveraging all of our partnerships. We have a great weekly series with the California Hispanic Chambers that they're allowing their local chambers to plug into. So we just want to make sure that information gets out there. So that's one, in terms of just the high touch engaging. And then 2 is really telling the stories of the small business owner. Because as you can see from this chart, many of the, or you can't see maybe, so I'll tell you. But on the left are the firms that are between 50 and 5 and 49 employees. So 96% of businesses in this country have less than 50 employees. The vast majority of businesses are small or very small. And so when you look at the number of firms on the left, so here in San Francisco, there are 6,000 firms that employ roughly 80,000 folks. But then you come all the way over here, And these are folks who do not offer a retirement product. So these are CalSavers eligible employers. When you come over to the large firm of 100 or more, here in the whole city of San Francisco, there are only 120 employers that don't currently offer retirement products. So the target market is really the real small guys, right? The small businesses. And so our focus is on how do you reach those employers, the ones that really are in this space where they have less than 50 employees, the vast majority of employers, and how do we then engage them, create this opportunity and get them plugged in? And then how do we tell their story? And this goes to, we'll talk a little about the critical need for resources in this space, because these next 2 years are going to be essential for the success of this program. Because as this is built, as we're working locally with business group associations, we're encouraging business owners to get enrolled, we're then telling their stories. We want to build a narrative around how this is a program that is helping businesses succeed. And we believe it is. And the feedback we've received so far, we believe it will be. But we need to make sure that we're telling that story. Because the other thing is the messaging around this, to Natalie's point about making sure that it's a real focused regional message. There are already voices out there telling business owners that they need to do things or they're going to get fined, or they need to do this or they're going to get in trouble. And we want to make sure that we are out there quickly to ensure that they have the right information about when this is happening, how this is happening, and what their real needs are. So those stories need to be told locally. The messaging needs to be constructed locally, and we need to make sure we're leveraging everybody's network to make sure that business owners understand this is an opportunity for them.
So Kelly's really our person here speaking for what's happening in the Bay Area, but I'll just say, from bird's eye view at the state level, what we're really trying to do is, and the reason, why United Ways of California is involved in this is really to try to create some infrastructure within the regional work groups. And I think specifically, we don't want people, we want messaging and the outreach work to be localized and, fitting the needs of that particular geographic community. We also understand that there's value in not reinventing the wheel. So obviously coming up with messaging, that we can share between what's happening, in the Bay Area and between LA and Inland Empire, and some best practices as well. We do a lot of the work of coordinating, what's happening within the regional work group. So we have actually, bi-weekly coordination calls to try to share, what's, make it a learning community about what's happening throughout the state between our regional work groups, because we're really trying to identify what the best practices are, what the needs are, and what the gaps are, in terms of what we're hearing on the ground as well. And I think particularly here, because I'm based in the Bay Area, even though I work statewide, there's just a wealth of organizations to hear. But I think, the left hand needs to talk to the right hand. And, it's important to make that connection, between, the outreach that is happening as well, and create that infrastructure as well.
So thank you. And hopefully, you heard something in this conversation about how you can, how you or your organization can plug in and who to talk to depending on how you want to engage. So the last question for the group. So I, started by talking about how as a funder we invested in the work. And so I wanted to pose the question to each of you around how philanthropy is already invested. And I think more importantly, what the gaps are that you see that remain, that you think that both funders here should know about, but also that the nonprofits here who work with funders should know about, so that for those who are interested in investing in outreach and enrollment, they have a sense of what that might look like and what you really need at this point. Start with you.
Sure. I think we're in it for the long haul. I mentioned earlier, we're in the pilot, CalSavers is in the pilot phase. And, this is going to be a long-term opportunity, to continue to invest. to Mark's point, filling that vacuum of information that is out there, getting the information out earlier. It's becoming much more relevant that financial education in general needs to also be part of the outreach as well, and educating communities about what is retirement and how do you save, aside from like putting money into your social security number, into your social security account, like what does this look like? And in terms of areas, we're supporting United Ways of California, United Way Bay Area, with some seed funding to try to get the work off the ground. But in Northern California, I think there's two major geographic areas within LA and Bay Area. There's really a vast scope of area to cover. And also specifically investing in, if we're looking at Northern California, wine country, and Northern California as well, who are looking at, really excited to engage in this work, Northern California specifically. And, I think throughout the state, I know this is, particularly funders, from United Way, from Northern California, but I think we do have, a whole geographic scope to cover throughout the state as well, and throughout even Southern California as well.
Yeah, so in terms of the gaps, I think, and Pamini sort of mentioned before, just in terms of the context. So we were engaged a lot around sort of the ACA rollout because we saw incredible opportunity for small employers to offer insurance to their employees and the opportunities that the ACA created. So if you compare sort of what we saw with the ACA engagement here in California in terms of the community engagement, the visibility, in the Cover California marketplace currently, they're around 1.5 to 2 million people, which is it's significant and important. But Cover California in their first year had a more than $30 million grant budget just from Cover California. That's not even counting what philanthropy put into enrollment and education. And that was to get roughly around 2 million folks enrolled in the individual market. We're looking at a target market of 7.5 million Californians. And there are 0 grant dollars from the state or from the program to do that. And so the gaps are big throughout the state. And just the scale of this program is intense. And so we want to leverage every bit of capacity that any partner can lend to this effort, whether that's communications, even if a foundation's not engaged in direct funding, engaging in communications or reaching out to the nonprofits that are in their portfolios, making sure that every education channel is activated to get this information out there is critical. I do want to think, and I know as sort of different foundations have sort of stepped into this space, the Padmini with the Wellness Foundation and Haas Senior sort of took a flyer on us, and when we were sort of engaged early, saying, "Hey, this is interesting. This is a great place to be," and we're incredibly thankful to be able to spend the time that we did on it. But really, as we enter now into this space, I mentioned the 2 years. It's a phase in of the program. So first year, businesses that have 100 or more employees have to be enrolled. Then 50 or more employees have to be enrolled the year after that. And then it's 5 or more employees. The real challenge is going to come in year 3 when it's businesses between 5 and 50 that are enrolling. Because as I just mentioned, that's most businesses. And that's when you have the least sophisticated business owners enrolling into this portal. So these next 2 years to build the infrastructure, to lay the foundation, to build the stories and the messaging and the framing around why CalSavers is so important to Californians is everything. So an investment now is way more valuable than an investment in a year or 2. An investment now is going to pay way more dividends. I do want to give a shout out to Silicon Valley Community Foundation, Alexandra, because what was interesting as she was looking at sort of like engaging this space is what's really exciting about CalSavers is folks don't quite know how to think about it. So you talk to really conservative folks, oh, it's great. It's private investment vehicles, right? Because it's an IRA and it's private investment. It's not government doing pensions, and they really like it. But then you could also articulate that it's actually a public benefit, right? It could be in a public benefit bucket in terms of an asset building strategy. And so you have, and that's what Silicon Valley Community Foundation said, hey, this is actually a public benefit that's really unique and exciting. So as you think about how to categorize this and how you think about it as it fits into some of your asset building strategies, because so many folks don't know how to think about it, I think it demonstrated that it's actually a really powerful program and a really unique product that's going to create a significant impact. So I can't stress enough that however you can engage through, yes, obviously resources direct into organizations that are doing this work, but even as important is how can you leverage all of the communication channels to make sure you're part of the working groups, that you're at the table with the United Way Bay Area to make sure that everyone is on the same page on messaging, on outreach, on connecting nonprofits and community organizations so that they have the information that they need to be able to get the word out about CalSavers. So I encourage you to get involved and sign up for the working group.
I feel like I didn't bring a sheet of paper for that today, but you can talk to me after. So I agree with, of course, amen to everything that's been said, but what I'll add to that is, you know, Nayeli mentioned places in the state that we're going to have some gaps, but I think here in the Bay Area, we're also pretty aware of some of the counties. Our United Way serves 8 counties, so that's all the Bay Area counties that you normally think of other than Sonoma, and that includes Napa, Solano, Contra Costa, which tend to have less philanthropic investment, especially Solano. Right? It's very hard to invest there or to find some investment opportunities there. And you know, we are thinking, of course, that as the United Way, we're always thinking about all of our 8 counties. And I think part of the reason, you know, there's just less players there, right? I have here in San Francisco, I can find, you know, 25 nonprofits in 5 minutes to work on something with, but in Solano, there's a select group of folks that have the capacity. So what I guess my message is investing in some additional capacity in some of those counties would be really important. And I also totally agree on the long-term funding and some upfront investment for multiple years. I feel like this is, you know, we're just getting ramped up, right? We're just getting started. And so I imagine that we're going to see some additional needs along the way, but, you know, setting this up right and being able to do this right is really important. And then last, I'll just say, and this is something Mark also kind of hinted at, is the in-kind support, right? So we can leverage the partnerships that we have in terms of not only just leveraging everyone's communication channels, but, you know, there's media partnerships that we all have. There's, you know, and that includes everybody, you know, from advertising to transit to whatever, you know, all the things, or printed, all those things. So, yeah, that's basically what I would say. I mean, I feel like there's, it's a really exciting program, and everybody that last week we had those newspaper type of things that you have. Mark mentioned that we had it was called a storyboard session where we had folks come, local employers, including Booksmith and Red Bay Coffee, who are 2 employers that are working on this. And what was interesting that the CalSavers noted for us here in the Bay Area, more than any other region where they did a session like this, is that the whole room, which included some nonprofits and some small business employers, they said everyone was really concerned about the employees. Like, even more than the 3 barriers that Mark mentioned, you know, cost, complexity, and the fiduciary responsibility. They were like, Red Bay Coffee was like, I want to take care of my people, right? Like, they were really worried about making sure that there was no crazy predatory product they were going to offer their people. It was going to be really easy to use, and that they were actually thinking about retirement. So I just feel like we have this unique opportunity here in the Bay Area to work with our small businesses and really make a change and a shift in how people are thinking about retirement and offer them this product at the same time.
So we are now going to open up to questions from all of you. And Mona will bring the mic around. Raise your hand if you have a question.
Thank you also. Always great to hear about great programs. I have a concern. Obviously, I think we all share that, you know, I think it's something about half of households in California are cost burdened, particularly with their housing costs, which obviously then makes it harder to have disposable income to put into savings vehicles. I think that's probably something that we all share. I think that then opens up a conversation with employers about how, if you want your employees to benefit from this, like to pay more so that they can take care of this. But I'm also, so that's just a comment. I think that it's something that I am concerned about. Like, we have lots of eligible people, but I'm actually wondering how many of them will actually be able to participate and take advantage of this really great opportunity. But wondering if you've had any conversations with the governor's team around maybe linking this to the Cali ITC, particularly the pilot where they're going to be doing year-round payments to folks, because I feel like the EITC is in many cases the savings vehicle for a lot of low-income families that lump sum that they get at the end of the year. But with that being split up over months now, and those are going to be much smaller amounts, maybe that's an opportunity to have a conversation about CalSavers in connection to that, so that it doesn't just get spent immediately when it comes in, but it actually becomes that sort of long-term lump sum growth vehicle.
I'll try to answer that or comment on that. I guess I have not had a conversation with the governor's team. I'll say that first, but I do know that the CalSavers team is thinking about how this gets integrated into into financial capability type services. So you're talking to someone about budgeting, the financial coaching type aspect. I mean, I definitely see the opportunity. I mean, tax time is a whole different ballgame for low income workers. So it certainly makes perfect sense to put that right in the middle of that conversation. And as a person who worked on a free tax preparation program for a long time, we used to say, and remember there was Myra, that went away. Where'd that go? So anyway, at the time, we were right before Myra came on the scene. We were thinking, if only we had it's hard at the tax site to really push our product. In my mind, the tax volunteers are already giving us so much. But this feels like this feels different to me, and it feels easier, and it feels, there's lots of products out there that you can choose, prepaid debit cards or savings accounts or, earn account, earn has different starter accounts, things like that. But to me, this feels like a conversation, especially in these next couple of years, are going to be really important to leverage that tax time moment. So I can see, I don't know how to, there's all kinds of initiatives that have happened where maybe like here in the city, kindergarten to college, we had when that first came out, we talked about how do we really push folks receiving the EITC to put that into their kindergarten to college account. So I think there's definitely room to talk about what that could look like on a pilot basis and then scale it to other, because VITA is for volunteer income tax assistance is national, right? So if we can work something out in some of these cities here in California, a couple cities in California, we might be able to do it through the state. So.
And into your first comment just around employee participation rates and who might do it. So this is an auto enroll. So it'll be really effective, especially for folks who just start working, and then they'll just automatically be enrolled in it unless they want to opt out. So folks can choose not to opt out if they would like. So studies show that you get about a 20% opt-out rate, but 80% do stay in the program. And that's sort of why that sort of auto-enroll feature is sort of the cornerstone of it, because the studies show that folks who are in, as Natalie mentioned in the presentation, folks who get in some sort of program from work that's auto-enrollment are 15 times more likely, right, to be able to save. So in terms of that first part, like who's going to opt out, who's not, we usually see about 20%, and we'll see how this program sort of moves forward. But it's a really important sort of thing to be thinking about, especially as how folks can afford this. On the second piece, in terms of the governor and the EITC, I think that's really creative and interesting. So the treasurer, so Fiona Ma, she chairs this Treasurer Ma, she chairs this board, and I know this is a program that she personally is going to be very invested in, and so there could be an opportunity working with her to think about what does that linkage look like and how do you sort of facilitate that. And then even further in the future, right, I think what's really exciting also about CalSavers is this is a portable benefit, right? And as we think about the future of work and we think about what's happening in how people are jumping from job to job, this is a really interesting framework to build interesting pieces around in the future. And that's why as a small business group, where a lot of our folks can't necessarily afford big benefits, just the infrastructure this creates is really exciting for us as well.
Questions? Other questions?
We're too polite.
Yeah.
So my name is Kong. I'm with Jazz Justice San Francisco. I had one question, which was specific. Given all this need for outreach, has there been around like posting requirements similar to minimum wage or workers' comp? It seems like this thing that you can have posted in all the workplaces, like the requirements that they have. I don't, just an idea. But it definitely seems what I'm taking away is definitely that intensity of the scale of outreach that is the need, and the lack of public dollars is just crazy to me, actually. And I'm wondering, is there also space for advocacy on that, be it on the state level, on the county level, even getting city money, because the absolute zero of public dollars in something that is completely a public interest is kind of astounding. I mean, I think we need it from all parts, but that was one question. And then the last question was, I guess just like, you know, for myself, I also save money, but you know, I'm one of those nonprofits that doesn't have a plan. So this is amazing to me, and I could see so much potential. And then I do see somebody raise, like, once you have a plan, do you save? And so I have saved even though I don't have a plan, but I'm always like struggling with like, well, now I have a kid in preschool and I'm trying to, are we going to buy a house? Is it too late? Or we should just like bunker down in our like rental apartment, you know, and pray the housing wave breaks, you know? Anyway, so I'm just like, how do we do this outreach to get people to sign up in ways that's set up for whatever you define as the next level of success in terms of people sign up and they are able to save? And on the gig thing, the Aaliyah app, like, are there ways for the employers to, you know, for the gig worker to be able to put in money for a gig employee?
Great question. Just in terms of the first one regarding sort of public investment, it was intentionally set up that way, for better or for worse, because of the political realities in Sacramento and getting the bill passed. Every dollar that the program spends, the program has to pay back, and the only way they pay it back is the fees on the program. So every dollar the program spends is being paid for by fees for folks who make, you know, on average $35K a year. So CalSavers is intensely focused on keeping their budgets as low as possible and that's why they're so interested in working with the nonprofit community and funders to get the word out, because they don't want to drive up their costs, which in turn will drive up the cost of the program, which will then mean higher fees for the folks who are actually in the program. And then you want to talk to the
Yeah. So Kung mentioned Aaliyah. So for those of you who don't know what that is, the National Domestic Workers Alliance, they have a subsidiary called NDWA Labs that has created this online platform called Aaliyah that is for particularly domestic workers. Actually, they're focusing in on housekeepers to begin with, or house cleaners. And it's a platform that they can go on and essentially connect, well, the employers can use it to connect them with, to provide them with benefits, but they also want to have links to other, you know, public benefit resources. So actually at the Haas Fund, we got a demo of Aaliyah, and I said, "Do you know about CalSavers?" And they did not. So I actually connected them with the staff at the state, and so they were talking, and I don't know what they've come up with, but since house cleaners and other gig workers can sign up for CalSavers, I'm hoping there'll be a way for folks to connect through that platform.
Just real quick on the employers contributing in CalSavers. Currently, no. And the reason is because it is not subject to ERISA, which is a federal law that requires that if a business has some sort of ownership over a retirement product, then they are liable for it, right? So that's the liability piece. And so by making it so it's employee only funded, it's not covered by ERISA, and therefore business owners aren't the fiduciary the state is. But it's, if an employer does want to offer a program that they can contribute to, they can absolutely do that at any time. But it's a really good question to pose as this program rolls out. Is this is great, but how do we build a robust portable benefit system for everybody?
And I was just going to comment on the messaging question and I think this is somewhat, you know, the same question around everyone has not enough money to live here already, and now we're going to ask them to save. Some of the messaging techniques that we use during tax time is to start somewhere, start small, and form a habit of savings. And that's why I think obviously the automatic enrollment, and I mean, many of you are already talking, you could be on this panel about messaging around savings, but I think that slide around the compound interest is part of the messaging, right? Start with, as little as you want, but start now. That's the important part, because it can build over time. And so we have to figure out how do I say that outside of this room, right? And to the people that need to hear it. So that's very good point.
So two questions. One is kind of around the nuts and bolts of the funder role. Is there going to be some sort of a toolkit or guide, or is that, a lot of ideas were presented, but is there some reference that we'll get at some point to look at the various options? So that's one.
Go ahead and answer.
And my second question is, I'm just curious, not to be a Debbie Downer, but how do we think about the messaging around this not being a slippery slope to Social Security privatization? How do we, and maybe this is just more of a rhetorical, and we've got to get to the nuts and bolts of the opportunity that's available, not the, kind of dark side. But that's just a question. And is that something that needs to be factored into the messaging? Like, this is in addition to Social Security. It supplements and adds to your Social Security. Even thinking about this as like a California Social Security, from a messaging standpoint, I'm just wondering about that, and also cautious because in a state as large as California, if we're widely successful with this, I just worry that it could be used to make the argument that, see, this is why we can privatize Social Security. So
I'll just answer the first question really quick and then I'll pass it on to you guys. So that's a great question. And I know even in our planning call, we were talking about like what's the next step, like in terms of engaging funders. So that's a great idea. And one of the things that I was going to say at the end was that for any of the funders here who are interested in continuing to engage, to let us know, because we're going to try and figure out what those next steps are. There's nothing yet, but that's a great idea, and we want that feedback. And we also want to have some way of keeping in touch with funders who are interested, especially, there will be, the program's new, so things are going to evolve and change, and we want to make sure there's a communication channel. And right now there isn't one for funders specifically. So perfect question, and we'll keep talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question. I think it's an important one, right? One to think about. In terms of the messaging short term, though, yes, in making sure that it's clear that it does not impact Social Security. Social Security is its own thing. This is different and not the same, and they're not meant to be the same thing. Is important. We did a focus group in LA with a bunch of Latino small business owners specifically on this, and that's actually one thing that came up. Like, how does this interact with Social Security? Am I going to lose it? And so as we've built our messaging, that's definitely a piece of it. But we seek to really make the clear distinction between the two. Partly for the reason you mentioned, right? You don't want to sort of cobble them together. You don't want to think one will replace the other. And so we want to make sure that it's clear that Social Security is what it is, and this is sort of a unique retirement program that exists.
Thanks. Dave Thompson from Monument Impact. So the immigrant and low-income folks that we work with often are challenged with the idea of investing and working in capital markets, right? And so I appreciate the first step really is like, how do you engage employers, right? And I'm curious what in the research that's been done so far has been the response of employees in terms of accessing or choosing a fund or whatever those vehicles are, and then what are plans going forward in terms of educating folks on that?
I can speak just to share a resource. Yesterday, Unidos US shared a report around engaging Latino workers, which is one of the largest populations within, the people of color who are eligible for this. So I don't, they might have it on their website, but I think they have some information around that. And I think, you know, one of the points that they highlight is definitely having trusted messengers and ensuring that, you know, the people that they trust, obviously being a population that's very unwary and for rightful reasons of public institutions and the government in general. That's definitely where we're going to need more trusted messengers in terms of like community organizations and like meet people where they're at, what they're going, right? To answer questions. And just to reiterate my point again of, you know, the financial education piece, I think it's maybe not a conversation, you know, that has been had, but I think this is, again, a great opportunity to say this is coming, this is on the way, and this is what it means as well.
And this isn't on the employee end, but so we in the from the focus group, one thing that was really interesting about Latino small business owners is we did sort of messaging on different sort of ways to frame it, and actually one that landed more significantly than the others was really around sort of the unique challenges that for savings in the Latino community that exists, and how messaging it around this is a unique opportunity specifically for the Latino community to access programs or products that otherwise they may not, is an empowering sort of thing. And so that was one of the more, it was just one of the messages that sort of landed. In that vein, we've working with California Hispanic Chamber. Our deputy in Southern California handles a lot of our Spanish language engagement. And so we've been specifically, it's not just sort of the same presentation translated, it's very specifically a Spanish language engagement strategy and products specifically to address that question, because there are unique questions that come up and challenges that come up when engaging small business owners. So on the small business side, it's also reflected.
Any other questions? This is more of a comment, but I just wanted to emphasize what Nayeli was saying about the education opportunity. So I'm Alexandra Bastian. I'm with the Silicon Valley Community Foundation. And one thing that, alongside with what Mark said about us seeing this as a public benefit, but I think the most exciting part about it is this educational opportunity. This program is truly financial capability. It is the information about participating in, you know, one aspect of the economy, right? Like investing. It's learning about it, and it's giving the opportunity to actually practice it with the tool. Yeah. And if we could just, if 7.5 million people could learn about investing from the very time that they take even their first job, that's amazing. So I just wanted to emphasize that there is a huge educational opportunity to like build the acumen, the financial like literacy and the acumen of lower wage workers who don't normally have access to these retirement savings. And I just want us all to like be invested in this educational opportunity.
I know that's not really a question, like you said, but I would just, and I'll double down on that. It's not just, it's that, but it's also, and now what role do employers play in making that happen, right? Like, I know there was a couple of, there was an employee here at the United Way. We offer a retirement plan, never saved. They don't work here now. And now I'm still friends with this person. I harass her to sign up for the 401k at her new job. But what's the role in the employer in saying, yeah, here's the thing, right? But how important is it, and what can you learn, and what's the financial capability sort of that hugs that whole process and system?
So we are going to wrap up the Q&A and talk about next steps. So, I mean, this is definitely it's the beginning of the program. It hasn't even officially launched yet. I think it's the beginning of conversation here locally. We talked about lots of ways to get engaged. If you didn't hear us say it 100 times already, this is also about getting the word out. So in terms of next steps, a really basic one is tell your colleagues, tell your tell if you're a nonprofit here, tell your funders. If you're a funder, tell your grantees. Just I think part of this is that I still encounter folks on at least a weekly basis who've never heard of the program, partly because it hasn't officially launched yet, but that's why this is the best time to be doing this kind of outreach. As I mentioned earlier, for funders in the room who are interested in staying abreast of what's going on and talking more about funding options, talk to Mona before you leave and let her know, and we will follow up with something, some kind of conversation or opportunity to engage more and talk more about what the options and opportunities are for engaging. And then lastly, I'm just going to give our panelists a final opportunity to share any closing thoughts they have before we leave.
So I think just to emphasize, the point that everybody has a role to play, and if you can't contribute as a funder, maybe you have connections to other funders, and specifically, can connect to media, communication, support that work, like all of the stuff that has been said. And I think just to emphasize again that this is a program that's just starting. There's I'm sure a lot we're learning as we're, how do you say, flying the plane as you build it, or however you say it. And, being responsive to like what we're hearing from the community, and like what we're hearing from, what works for small business employers, what works for employees in general, like what are some of the questions and things that we're like learning on the ground and that we're identifying as best practices, not only for the mechanics of the program, but I think also, from an outreach strategy perspective, and being able to reach, the populations that need to hear this messaging the most.
Yeah, I think, and we touched on it, but I can't stress enough the critical nature around communication and community engagement over the next 2 years. What is solidified in people's minds, or the lack thereof, is what they're going to come into that third year with. And that third year is where it may get there. If they're going to be bumps, it'll probably be in the third year. So these next 2 years and building the infrastructure and getting the word out there is critical. And so anything that you can do to support that would be phenomenal. And then I will make one concrete ask. Between now and, let's say, 2 months, would you consider including including CalSavers in your next organizational communication, whatever that is? If you need content, I can get you content. We can get you content. Happy to get you content. But just, we'll include it in a newsletter or a blog post that we do or something. Just the next communication over the next few months, pick one. So we'll include a piece on CalSavers or a link on CalSavers or something, just to start that process. We'd love for you to do that. Happy to provide you and make it as turnkey as possible.
And I would just say, if you're interested in, I've already talked about today, but if you're interested in plugging into any of the work groups, or we'll probably be having different outreach events, make sure to talk to me, and I'll be happy to include you. Thank you. Oh. There are surveys at your table. We'd love to get your feedback quickly before you leave, and you can leave your name badges at the front. The surveys are really helpful because as a Funders Network, we host lots of events like this throughout the year, so it's really helpful to get your feedback to help us improve. And also, if you have ideas for future meetings or topics, we'd love to hear them. So thank you all for coming, and most of us will be here at least for a few more minutes if you have one. Thank you.